Welcome to T-News 9 channel. Today we're diving into chapter 11 of the novel My Wife is a Gangster, titled I Make My Choice. Some decisions are made quietly, before anyone can stop you. Before you change your mind, I left at dawn. There were no guards, no emotional farewells. Just a simple note left on the table. It read, "You once told me I could leave. I'm choosing to walk forward." The address from the message I received led me to an abandoned harbor. The fog was so thick you could barely see, and the water below was as black as night. It was the perfect setting for what was about to happen. They were already there, waiting for me. 3 cars and way too many men. They all had these cold smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes, sending a shiver down my spine. One of them stepped forward, looking me up and down. "You came alone," he stated, more than asked. I just nodded. "That's the deal." He let out a short, harsh laugh. "You know she'll come for you." My reply was calm, even though I was anything but. "She won't. If I make this fast." They searched me thoroughly, looking for a weapon, a wire, anything. Their disappointment was obvious. They just didn't get it. I wasn't there to fight them. I was there to delay, to talk, to stall for as long as I could. I was there to buy time. Inside, my heart was pounding like a drum against my ribs, and my legs felt like jelly. But I forced my voice to remain steady. "If you kill me," I said, looking them straight in the eye, "you create a monster you can't control." They paused, and that small hesitation was all I needed. In the distance, the faint wail of sirens began to echo, growing louder. The whir of helicopter blades started to cut through the thick morning fog. Suddenly, the smug smiles vanished. One of them lunged forward and grabbed my collar, his face just inches from mine. "You think you're brave?" he snarled. I slowly shook my head. "No," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm married." Just as he cocked his gun, everything exploded. A blinding flash of light, a deafening roar of sound, pure chaos erupted all around us. As the first shots rang out, only one single thought crossed my mind. If this is the price of keeping her human, I'll pay it. Chapter 12 of My Wife is a Gangster, titled The Queen's Wrath. She knew. The moment she woke up and the bed was empty, she knew. There was no note, no goodbye, just a heavy, chilling absence. A silence that spoke volumes. Her phone rang, just once. A single word was all it took. Harbor. She didn't scream. She didn't waste time asking questions. She grabbed her coat, her voice dangerously calm as she gave the order. "Find him," she said, to everyone. In an instant, the city transformed. Cars flooded the streets, a river of steel and purpose. Helicopters sliced through the night sky, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. All of Tokyo seemed to hold its breath. At the harbor, a thick fog swallowed everything, muffling the world in a gray shroud. Then the sound of gunfire echoed, a distant, terrifying rhythm. Too late. She arrived to find a scene of pure chaos. Bodies lay on the cold ground. Cars were engulfed in flames, painting the fog with an orange glow. Blood was everywhere. And then she saw him, alive, but on his knees with a gun pressed firmly to his head. In that moment, time itself seemed to stop. Every man there felt it, a sudden, suffocating pressure, the air itself tightening around them. She stepped forward. Her movements were slow, deliberate, and calm. Someone shouted, "Drop your weapon." She didn't even flinch. Her gaze was locked on the man holding her husband. In a voice as soft as a whisper but carrying the weight of a death sentence, she said, "You touched something that belongs to me." 1 shot. The man fell, and then hell broke loose. Her men moved like a relentless storm, a force of nature. There was no mercy, no restraint, just swift, brutal efficiency. She walked through the storm of gunfire, completely untouched, her eyes never leaving me. When the chaos finally subsided, the harbor was silent once more. She knelt in front of me, her usually steady hands trembling. "You don't get to choose this alone," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I tried to smile, the effort costing me. "You came," I managed to say. She pulled me into her arms, holding me tightly, right there, surrounded by smoke and blood. That night, the underworld learned a final, unforgettable lesson. You can threaten the queen. You can even challenge her throne. But if you force her to choose, she will burn the entire world down for what is hers. Chapter 13 of the novel, My Wife is a Gangster, titled After the Screams. After the screams came the silence. There were no sirens, no orders being shouted, no sight of blood. Just the steady sound of rain tapping against the windows of the safe house. She was sitting on the floor, her back pressed against the wall, still wearing her coat. Hours had passed since she last spoke a word. I decided to be the one to break the silence. "I'm sorry," I said softly. She lifted her head to look at me, and in that moment, for the first time since this war started, she wasn't a queen. She was simply a woman who had come terrifyingly close to losing the person she loved most. Her hands trembled as they reached up to touch my face, almost as if she needed to confirm that I was real, that I was really there. "I was ready to burn everything," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The city, the families, myself." I gently took her hands in mine. "You didn't lose me," I reassured her. "And you won't." She shook her head slowly, the memory still fresh. "I saw you on your knees," she said, her voice cracking. "And I couldn't breathe." She paused, then continued, "I don't fear enemies. I fear that moment." She leaned into my chest, and I could feel her heartbeat fast and uneven. That night, she finally slept for the first time in days, curled up beside me, clutching my shirt like it was her anchor in a storm. When dawn broke, she woke up quietly. I watched as she put her armor back on, piece by piece, becoming the queen once more. Before she left the room, she turned and said, "They think fear controls me." She glanced back at me, her eyes holding a new kind of fire. "But love is the only thing that ever has." And in that instant, I understood. The war raging outside was far from over, but the true battle, the one inside her, had just begun. Chapter 14. The Final Alliance. Let's get right into it. Power isn't something you just take. It's something that must be acknowledged. The meeting was set for dawn. There were strict rules. No weapons allowed on the table, no voices raised in anger. This was a gathering of leaders, old rivals, and former enemies. These were the men who had once doubted her capabilities, who had questioned her every move. Yet, as she entered the room, they all stood. That simple gesture spoke volumes, echoing a respect that had been hard-earned. She chose not to sit at the head of the table. She didn't need that kind of formal display of power. Her presence alone was enough. The other leaders spoke first, outlining their terms for peace, discussing borders and establishing new rules of engagement. She listened patiently, absorbing every word, every nuance. When they were finished, it was her turn. "There will be no more private wars," she stated, her voice calm but firm. "No more games played behind my back." She didn't have to shout to be heard. The authority in her tone was undeniable. Still, one man showed a flicker of hesitation. "You ask for our trust," he said, his voice laced with concern. "But power like yours, it frightens people." She met his gaze without flinching. "Good," she replied coolly. "Fear keeps promises." A heavy silence fell over the room. The weight of her words settled in. Then, one by one, each leader bowed their head. It wasn't a bow to her family name or her lineage. It was a bow to her and her alone. The ultimate acknowledgement of her reign. Later, I watched her from a distance as she stepped outside the hall. For a brief moment, she stood alone, the immense weight of her new reality settling onto her shoulders. I cautiously approached her. "You won," I said, trying to offer some comfort, but she just shook her head slowly. "No," she answered quietly, her gaze distant. "I became." That was the day everything changed. Alliances were signed, long-standing wars were finally brought to an end, and the lines of power were redrawn across the entire underworld. A new truth had been accepted, one that could no longer be ignored or denied. She wasn't just fighting for the throne anymore. She was now the very center of it. Chapter 15 of My Wife is a Gangster, titled Peace Talks. Let's get right into it. Peace is never free. It just costs less blood. The room was bright, far too bright for the kind of decisions being made within its walls. On the polished table, documents were laid out in perfect order. They were covered in borders, numbers, and names. She went through every line, her eyes scanning each word with intense focus. "This district," she announced, her voice cutting through the tension, "will no longer belong to us." A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. This wasn't just any district. It was profitable, strategic, and incredibly important. But she offered no explanation. She just signed the paper. Another document was pushed forward. Another loss was accepted. Another heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, someone couldn't hold back any longer. "Is this wise?" the voice asked, laced with doubt. She looked up from the papers, her gaze steady. "Peace is never wise," she replied calmly. "It's necessary." By noon, the talks were concluded. Hands were shaken. Smiles, though perhaps strained, were exchanged. Enemies who had walked into the room ready for a fight left as partners. Outside, I walked beside her, the city air cool on my face. "You gave up a lot," I observed, unable to hide my surprise. She simply nodded. "Power that isn't shared," she said, her words carrying a weight I was only just beginning to understand, "never lasts." When we reached the car, she paused. She pulled off her gloves, her movements deliberate. Then, she took out a lighter and burned them. The flame was small, controlled, and deeply symbolic. "I don't need reminders of who I was," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper against the city sounds. That night, she sat by the window, her silhouette framed against the sprawling city she now ruled. She wasn't smiling. She didn't look proud. She was just still. And in that stillness, I finally understood. Victory might end wars, but it's peace that truly teaches you what you've lost.